try and get the chat so I can actually see you and see where you've all come from. I mean, thank you so much for joining today. There are people from literally all over the world. It's quite a daunting but amazing thing. So as I said, today we're going to be looking at wellbeing in the primary classroom. As teachers, we obviously have a unique opportunity to create a positive, supportive environment where our students can thrive. And today we're going to look at some of the research into wellbeing in the primary classroom and explore some practical and effective classroom strategies. Before we start, just a little bit about me, or a little bit about my well-being. Coming out of COVID and reflecting on the things that support my well-being, two of the most important things in my life are my dogs. They're hiding in another part of the house because if not, they would be here probably wanting to chat with you, a little bit of barking. My dogs really help my mood. They help me get out of the house and they keep me in a routine. Another thing that I'm extremely grateful for is that I live in Naples and I'm able to look out to sea. Being near water, being near the sea really helps me to relax and obviously encourages me to go out for a walk or just enjoy being near water. Okay. I asked a few people before the session, or I asked you before the session, a few questions. And one of those questions was, what do you do to maintain your own well-being? And there were some very, very interesting responses. There was, I keep a regular routine, eat well, work out, don't watch TV, etc. There was someone who focused more on their teaching, how much they planned, not focusing on perfection, and obviously talking to colleagues about problems and taking a pause. And then there was this comment: which one resonates with you? And what do you do to maintain your own well-being? Oh, mindfulness, nature, animals, and volunteering. How wonderful, Corinne. Okay, if you could just add some thoughts to the chat. Okay, read, yeah, reading, cycling. Thanks, as in gratitude. Goals every week. That's wonderful. Exercise. Work on time. Singing. Oh, marvelous. Praying, writing, taking breaks. Okay, listening. Okay, so we've got a wealth of ideas. And maintaining our own well-being is obviously really important to then how we perform in the classroom as teachers. I'm glad I haven't seen any, very little in the chat. So wonderful. Great. Okay. Obviously, thinking about what we're going to do today, we're going to focus on what is well-being. Then we're going to focus a little bit on flip thinking. And as I suggested at the very, very beginning in my video, we're also going to look at some activities and ideas that we can use in the ELT classroom. Okay, so first of all, what is well-being? Again, in the pre-webinar task, I asked you to define well-being. What is it? And some great definitions came from the task. So we have well-being or wellness is quality of life. The state of one's mental condition wasn't what another participant said. And the third one, feeling well, comfortable with oneself, having enough support from one's surroundings. So these were all, actually, if you squash these together, we come up with a pretty good definition of well-being. Well-being refers to the state of being happy, healthy, and content. And in the context of education, it means creating an environment that promotes social, emotional, and physical health for our students. And there's been quite a lot of research that has shown that when students feel safe, supported, and valued, they're more likely to be engaged in their learning and achieve better academic outcomes. So, how do we do this? You may know something of the 5 Wellbeing, which is being quite actively promoted in the UK, in Australia, and in many countries around the world. The 5 ways of wellbeing are the following. One is connect. Okay, so talk, listen, be there, and feel connected. Okay, so talk with your family, with your friends, your school, people in your local community. Think of them as the sort of cornerstones of your life and invest time in them every day. The second is be active. And obviously, we need to do what we can. It would depend on where you live, what you have in your working week. But obviously, any kind of activity will help our well-being. Okay, so it could be go for a walk, go for a dance, play a game. Exercise obviously makes you feel good, but obviously we need to adapt that to our level of mobility and fitness. Yeah, go running. Take notice. So just take a little bit of time every day to perhaps step outside and look at a flower or a plant or a tree or the sea, like I do. It's obviously taking notice of our surroundings, being curious, catching something quite beautiful will help us to remember the simple things that give us joy. Keep learning is the 4th. Obviously, you're here today in this webinar, and so you are obviously seeking opportunities and learning, hopefully, something new. Okay, and the 5th way towards well-being is to give. So give your time, give your words, give your presence. Okay, do something nice for a friend or a stranger, or, as I noticed in the chat, volunteer if you have time. Okay, so seeing yourself giving to others will be incredibly rewarding and obviously help our wider community. Okay, another person who I find eminently rewarding is Andrew Coley. He's a fabulous educator, and unfortunately he's moved out of teaching, but luckily he's doing more training. And his book, The Wellbeing Curriculum, is specifically for the primary classroom. Obviously, it's the primary mainstream classroom, and some of you may be working in international schools or state schools, but a lot of it we can easily transfer to ELT. In his book, he talks about the 4 cornerstones of well-being, and they are the following. Well-being is empathetic and honest. Okay, teachers modeling empathy for their students, and if this is done consistently, will obviously help us with classroom management. It will help with the challenges that we meet in the classroom, and it will help us to build trust. Okay, we need to let our learners know that our classroom is a place. We need to know that our classroom is a place where we acknowledge mistakes, and they are free to discuss how they're feeling. And as teachers, we need to build this into the learning process. Wellbeing is collective, so things like teamwork, supporting each other, and occasionally standing up for injustices, which I'll talk about a little bit later on, helps to build a real sense of team. Routine, wellbeing is routine, and routines are great. And I'll look at some time maybe some moments when it isn't, and how to adapt to that. And well-being is part of good relationships and school culture. Obviously, for ELT, we have fewer hours with our learners. And so being able to build in a sense of school culture is obviously more challenging for us. But later on, we'll look at some ways of doing that. Another person who has done a lot of work with wellbeing, hang on a sec, I just need some water. Oops, is Sarah Cregan. She's an educator and she's developed some wellbeing training for children, also for teachers like us. And very interestingly, she also has some training, which is not related to wellbeing, or interestingly for managing menopause. And I was recently listening to her in a podcast known as Tiny Voice Talks Education. Don't worry, all these things that I'm mentioning will actually be in the handout that you can download at the end, including the activities that we'll focus on. So I just want, don't stress if you don't get everything. Sarah talks about flip thinking, which is basically turning a problem into an opportunity to overcome difficulties and build well-being. So flip is obviously refers to 4 points. What do you think the F in flip might stand for? Okay, these are strategies that we might use to overcome a problem. Fun. Oh, goodness me. Samar, yes. I just saw it. Samar is absolutely correct. It's about focus. Forget focus. Yeah, it's about focus. And focus is about what we have in our control. And I think maybe the pandemic is a good example of this. We just had to simply get on and do what we could in a situation that was beyond our control. So we can just get on with it, or we can develop strategies to overcome this. And a simple activity that I do with my students, and I'd like you to do it with me now. Okay, I want you to imagine you are you as a child, but you are 5 or 6 years old. Okay. And I want you to think about things that made you giggle. Okay, so for example, I don't know why. I think it might be because I grew up in Australia. I used to be in the car and we'd have quite long trips because we often traveled long distances. And the person who made me giggle was my sister. And we would be in the car and obviously giggle and look at each other and giggle. And it would actually drive my parents mad. What things made you giggle as a child? Cartoon characters, clowns, games, puppies, your brothers. Okay, songs, puppets, funny stories, bald heads, puppies being silly, your dad. Okay, animals, dogs, friends. Yeah, so lots of things make us giggle. What made you feel safe? For example, when I was a child, I could not go to bed unless my wardrobe was closed. If the wardrobe was open, I didn't feel safe. Yeah, grandparents, I had a really good relationship with my grandma. Yeah, security, home, mum, books. Oh, blanket, mum kissing me goodnight, grandma, Law and Order. Light on. Okay, yeah. Excited. Mum's hug. Yeah. So these are the things that we think of. Okay, good. What made you feel strong? My strong place was, this obviously isn't me. It's an image thanks to Free Pick. But I always felt really, really strong when my dad would let me climb up on his shoulders. It was usually when I was tired, but the strength that I felt walking on these big shoulders made me feel strong. What things made you feel strong? Your home. Okay. Physical exercise, people, abilities, hope, family, completing your homework. Yeah, that's good. Meeting my mates, that's very competitive. Overcoming through the dark. Okay. Chocolate. Okay, so thinking about focus. When our learners are feeling stressed or tired in the classroom and we need them to focus, we can use activities like this to build a strategy to cope with stress. So, for example, the activity that we've just done, when do you giggle? When do you feel safe? When do you feel strong? We could develop this activity with our learners and get them to draw a picture of the situations that perhaps they giggle, if they need to, feel safe, or feel strong. Yeah. And then we make a class display. So if there is a moment when a student isn't feeling 100%, they might be feeling a bit stressed, we can direct them to our wall display and they can go to their safe place or their strong place for a few minutes. Okay. Back to flip. L, what do you think L might stand for? It's a bit more than learning. Oh, listening. No, that's nice. Learners. Okay, no, it's actually about language. Okay, and language isn't just restricted to the words that we use. We have humor, we have body language, we have the tone of voice that we use in the classroom, a fixed growth mindset, the messages that we give to students. And these are just some things to consider when we are talking to our students. Okay. When we're talking to our students, we need to be genuine. Children learn that they can trust us when we say what we mean and use a straightforward tone. And this obviously helps them to feel respected and safe and helps them to develop self-discipline. Often we use indirect language to win compliance. And I'm sure you're all familiar with the scenario where you have a couple of students in your class that are perhaps not focused on the activity that you want them to do. And you look at a good pair of students and you say, wow, you're doing great work, Giuseppe and Anna. And you look sort of to the right and the other students have picked up on the fact that you are praising good behavior because they're not behaving well. This kind of use of language is, one, it isn't genuine, and two, you're mimicking the desired behavior in order to win praise, but your language doesn't really help the learners to sorry, I'm just having a little moment. The language that you're using doesn't necessarily help the learners who are not doing what you want them to do. And so we have these sort of positive examples, and that can actually be damaging for the internal relationships in the class. So just speak directly to your learners and be genuine and say, can you guys listen? We're doing this now. Okay. So be very genuine and simple. Trust in your learners' abilities. Okay. The language that we use with our learners obviously helps them to see how they see themselves. So we often have charts, support in the classroom, and when learners are not confident about doing a task, you can take time out to just show them the guides, what perhaps they might do to follow simple tasks that you've set up for them in the classroom. Okay. Obviously, when they do behave positively, remind them how good they are. For example, if you have a tidy up song or a routine in your class and they've done that really quickly, say that was great. The language, obviously, that we use helps their confidence. Focusing on action is the third. Children are concrete thinkers and they need to have specific names, okay, for things. Okay, so using things like be respectful might not be as constructive as just simply telling them what to do and keeping our instructions simple and clear and telling them what we expect from them. Okay. My voice is going. In addition to that, keep your classroom language brief. Okay. So for example, if we're telling them, what I want you to do is when you've finished writing your essay or writing your sentences, close your books, put your pens in your pencil case, everything in your backpack, and get ready to leave the class, is far too long. Either break down your instructions into short, simple parts, or keep them very, very brief. Okay. Some of our learners won't follow everything. Okay. And the final thing to think about is it's okay to be silent. Sometimes silence is more effective than classroom chatter. Okay. It also means that we have an opportunity to really listen to our students and watch the interaction in the class. I for any idea? Oh, involve, interest, interaction. Good. Yeah. It's actually about imagination. And imagination, you may have seen Michelle Morgan's webinar early in the week, really tapping into imagination, build and inquiring can be really resourceful. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a little story about a child I know. He comes to my house quite a lot, and when he was very, very small, he was running through my house and slamming doors, and it was driving me crazy. But I said to him, Oscar, please don't run and slam doors. And I told him a little, which was actually a true story, who was doing something very similar as a child and caught her cousin's finger in the door. And sadly, she lost her finger. Oscar listened to the story. And then he looked at me and he said, oh, look, that's okay, Jane. I've got 6 fingers. It was very frank, very clear, and I obviously didn't check to see he had 6 fingers, but his imagination helped him to find a very solution-focused response to me asking him not to slam the doors. And we know learners at primary level have they have a very, very vivid imagination, and it's important for us to tap into that. Oscar, in a certain sense, turned a negative into a positive, and I think that our learners can be extraordinarily creative. A 4-year-old obviously can be completely fearless and not really care, and then as they're moving up to 5 and 6 years of age, there's sort of less bravery, and unfortunately, the older we get, the less brave we are. So thinking about creating or building on imagination and creative culture in a classroom is really important. The final one, it's P. What could P stand for? Okay, they're all fantastic. Play, participation, practice, they're all great. P's. I'm not going to spend too long on this because if not, we won't finish. Oh, there it goes. It's pattern breaking. Very good, TN. I just saw it, that flyby. This chat is moving quite fast. Yes, it's about pattern breaking. And something that I touched on early, pattern breaking, obviously routines are really, really great, but what happens if we have a pattern of behavior that we're unhappy with? Okay, in a certain sense, we need to create new neural pathways, and one of the most wonderful ways of doing this is using literature and stories to promote well-being. I'd love to talk to you about them today, but I think I'm going to be running out of time. Some of my favorite ones that I use with primary learners are Skellig, Where the Wild Things Are, and Wonder. Yeah. And obviously there is a wealth of literature out there that you can adapt to get and use in class to get our learners to reflect on difficulties and differences and how we might feel in situations that we might be living in, and help us to break those really disruptive patterns of behavior. Okay, moving on. As I said, I'm going to talk you through some activities that you can use in the classroom that will help to build well-being amongst your learners and obviously in their relationship with you. The first thing is checking in. Okay, these may be too many depending on the age of your class, but having simple emojis to indicate, you can even just have 3: happy, okay, and sad. Okay, or 4, tired, and have them visible above the board or to the side. Have them visible when you're taking the register and the beginning of the class. Greet your learners, ask them how they're feeling, and slowly build this in as a routine to the start of the lesson. Knowing how your learners are feeling can help you to understand why they might be behaving in a certain way, and also perhaps help you decide who you might want them to work with. Okay. Yeah. We could also, if they are perhaps feeling sad, we could direct them to their giggle wall display, things to make them feel a little bit better. Okay. Another way to check how our learners are feeling when they're approaching activities would be to use traffic lights. Okay, you could have coloured papered cups, or you could just have simple discs of red, yellow, and green, and have them on your desk. When you set up an activity and you've given your instructions and you've modelled what they need to do, just ask your learners to decide where they are. Okay, so are they green, yellow, or red? Okay, what is green? Green means they understand what they have to do and off they go. Yellow, I might need a little bit more help understanding what I have to do. And red is, I don't understand, I need help. Okay. The green students go. The yellow students, ask them to chat to their partner or the person, their group on the table, and ask them about the task and see if they can help them. In the meantime, you go directly to the red traffic light and help them. This means that learners don't feel demotivated about not understanding a task. Obviously, if the whole class has put up a red traffic light, it might mean that you need to rethink your instructions and demonstrate the activity again. Okay, the last one is a spaghetti tower. Obviously, it will depend on your teaching context. I wouldn't use marshmallows in my classroom, but you can get, I don't know if any of you are familiar with it's coloured corn foam, which looks very similar to a marshmallow, but it's not edible. I'm sorry, a big bunch of spaghetti and some marshmallows or corn foam. Give them to your learners and ask them to build a tower. Okay. Take a step back and really watch your learners and see how they interact. Okay. It's a great team building activity for learners, and it also helps to build a sense of community, which is necessary for well-being. Okay. Another important consideration is the learning environment. And the learning environment is obviously one of the most important factors in promoting well-being in the classroom. And obviously it needs to be positive and inclusive. This will help foster better learning, and we need to obviously establish clear expectations and routines. So icebreakers like the building activity I mentioned previously, and collaborative projects can really help our learners to feel connected to each other and invested in their learning. Obviously with ELT, this is a bit more difficult because sometimes we only see our learners for a few hours, depending on where you're teaching. But I really do believe that having learners respect their learning environment, tidying up songs, keeping the learning environment in order and looking after each other are really, really important. So tidy habits and creating a sense of safety, which again would be very much dependent on where you're working, are crucial. Again, it's also really important to teach social emotional skills. And if you have space in your classroom, some of us don't, but it is wonderful if you can incorporate plants into your classroom. It can be used as a long-term project. It builds a sense of excitement. Learners are curious to come back. So for example, if you plant seeds and then the seeds start to sprout, they'll grow and get excited and regularly check with the plants. And then from that, we can go on and explore other things that make them feel, I'm losing my voice, that make them feel better. Obviously, the presence of plants also provides cleaner air, which can improve our learners' moods and help them to concentrate better. Okay. Tracking growth, you could do that on a Padlet or a poster. And if you have space for a variety of plants, groups could take responsibility for the different sets of plants and share their learning and understanding to the whole class. Also thinking about health, in the obviously in the handout, there's more detail here. There's a couple of suggestions about healthy snacks, and a little video that you could use with your learners. Get your learners to think about what kind of snacks they like. Are they healthy? Are they unhealthy? And then get them to reflect on what else makes their minds and bodies healthy and full of energy. Physical health is also really important. It's an important component of well-being, and encouraging movement and exercise is a great way to help them to release energy. If you're lucky enough to have a big classroom, do get your learners to dance. There are fantastic songs that are age appropriate. If you're limited for space, there's great things like desk yoga, where we do activities sitting in our chairs. Okay. What's important is that learners are not sitting down all the time. They're standing up, and think carefully about the activities that you're using. Could they be standing up? Could they be moving around the room? If you're lucky to have space, do exploit it. Okay, or maybe use the stairs in your building if health and safety allows for this. Okay, so by promoting well-being in the primary classroom, we create a positive and supportive learning environment. And I hope some of the strategies and the activities that I've shown you today to promote social and emotional and physical health will help you and your students to thrive both academically and personally. Do remember that every student is unique, and it may be necessary to use different approaches to support their well-being. But by being tuned into their needs and providing a safe and nurturing space, we can really empower our learners and help them to reach their full potential. Okay. Are there any questions, Paul? My goodness, I just need to have a drink of water.
Do it, that's fine. That was brilliant. Just before we move on to questions, I was like sort of, sort of mesmerized.
Thank you, Paul. I'm just worried about my voice. It's going.
Yeah, no, yeah. Are you okay?
yeah. I'm fine now.
Okay.
Combination.
Okay, cool. Okay, good. Actually, I had a question. The boy Oscar with the 6 fingers. Did he actually have 6 fingers?
No, he didn't. But it was just that his ability to adapt to the situation and use his imagination was
okay.
It just really hit home that children can they can really be quite imaginative. I think it's like that. I don't know if you've seen in the BBC. There are those very short videos with children, and they leave them in the garden with a cake.
Oh yes, okay.
And they can't resist it, and they eat the cake, and then the teacher comes back and they tell all the stories of who came and ate the cake. It was like a big bird flew down, and they are just amazing. And as teachers, we really need to be tapping into that. It also makes teaching much more enjoyable.
I guess it's sort of, I'm sort of thinking about that story and sort of trying to relate it to kind of classroom context, and just sort of thinking, okay, because I'd be really annoyed that this person keeps slamming the door, but then they've come out with this, like, so it just sort of diffuses that anger a little bit. I think as teachers, particularly
it's also language that we use. I perhaps shouldn't have been so frightening by telling him this horrible story about my mum's cousin losing her finger, but the way he reacted was just
that's good. That's good. I like that. Okay, there are some questions. For some reason my screen keeps turning off, but I'm not disappearing, so that's good. Okay, let me see. There's a few questions actually. I mean, obviously this session is for primary learners. I don't mind me asking, Jane, because I know you have a lot of experience working with all age groups.
Yeah.
There are a couple of questions about applying some of these strategies with secondary or with teenage learners.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, maybe, I mean, a different kind of checking in might be for a teenage class, you'd be thinking about a circle and just sort of getting things off your chest at the beginning of the lesson. So checking in, but obviously checking in with more about them. That actually really helps to build a great sense of team in the class, and people support each other because they talk about, you know, how their day's been and what's annoying them or what's made them happy. It can be a really good way to start the lesson, but perhaps in a big circle for teens. Also, I know of a teacher who uses that. They do that once a week in their school, that teachers all come together and just get everything off their chest. And they find that really, really helpful. So it could be primary, secondary, or adult.
Yeah.
Yeah, and things like team building, obviously making a marshmallow, a marshmallow tower. You could use that with any level.
Okay. Yeah. Make sure they don't eat the marshmallows, I guess.
Yeah, I've just stopped using them because it was they ate more marshmallows than, but the the coloured corn foam, that works really well.
Yeah. Okay.
And yeah, using it in teacher training to sort of demonstrate it. It's very
Yeah, no, I think with the sort of spaghetti tower, I've done that a few times. It's a good one. All right, it's interesting question from Analia. And for some reason, I'm getting, my screen keeps turning off. I'm really sorry, but it's it'll hopefully come back in a second. All right, using L1 in the English class can build safety among our students, but we are told not to speak our mother tongues by our directors. What do you think about that?
I think maybe your director needs to be a little bit more understanding, particularly with primary learners, because here, we do need to encourage and support. It's tricky because sometimes teachers don't understand learners' first language, and that can be incredibly frustrating. But if there is perhaps a classroom helper, actually understanding what is frustrating a learner is really important. And for some students, it's like, I haven't got my favorite pencil, and so the whole lesson's not going to go to plan. But by understanding that, we can obviously support them. So I think there is definitely a place for L1, particularly in the primary classroom, where the vocabulary that they have may be somewhat limited. But maybe you could get a helper. If the director's being really strict about that, get a classroom helper to translate for you.
Yeah, I think, I mean, there's a big debate around using L1, but obviously with sort of lower level or with primary students, sometimes it helps with their well-being. They can,
absolutely,
thrown into this environment. Okay. Okay, question from Sama. If we have students who tick the angry emoji, how can we deal with them?
How can we deal with them? I think we can talk to them and find out what is making them angry. Some students that I know, particularly primary learners who are perhaps doing an afternoon course with us, have also been at school until 4 o'clock. They might have had a good lunch, and they know that after their English lesson, they're going on to do sport or some kind of extra lesson for mathematics, or getting their homework done as well. So some learners can be angry. They can have personal issues that we perhaps haven't been informed about. I think it's really important, if they are angry, is to talk to them and listen. We can't, obviously, we may not be able to fix the situation, but we can listen to them and be understanding if they need a little bit of time out,
Right.
or you know that there's a student in the class who's more supportive, you could pair them up with them, just to make them feel more comfortable.
Okay. 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 Speech therapy techniques. Sort of gone off a bit here from, but I just do you know of any speech therapy techniques to encourage speaking?
I think there are lots of activities that you can do to encourage speaking. Obviously, in primary, there's also quite a lot of phonics work. That's probably a whole nother webinar, Fiona, but it's a good topic, and I think we can do a lot. Maybe that could be another teaching English webinar, Paul.
Yes, I think great. Okay,
I'm not an expert in speech therapy, so I really feel I can shed some light.
Okay, that's a shame. I was about to say, would you come back and do that? But okay, obviously not for that one, but we'll be back for different ones. Okay, I don't know whether how. Okay, this is a question that's about sort of perhaps working with kids in conflict areas, and sort of techniques for that, and whether these. I mean, for me personally, I haven't worked with learners who have come from, or who, from conflict areas, but I would imagine that a lot of the techniques and the strategies that you've been talking about here would actually sort of work incredibly well.
And I think at the moment there are an awful lot of teachers who are going beyond their actual role as teachers and are fully catering for their learners' well-being, and I really tip my hat to them. They're doing an incredible job. These are simple strategies. There, I think probably a lot more personal rapport is needed, just to make sure that they're okay.
It's kind of interesting, I think, isn't it? Because it is more and more, we see kids and families who are sort of, leaving countries where there is conflict and arriving in classrooms where teachers perhaps haven't had specific training on dealing with trauma, or so something like this, and implementing some of the strategies that you've got, at least is for me, it seems like it's something that would go some way to sort of at least alleviating or addressing some of the
one of the schools that I was working in, we had some girls coming from the Ukraine. They were so well looked after. The whole school was sort of behind them, and even when one went to the bathroom, they took them to the bathroom to make sure they knew where they were going. They didn't want to come to my lessons anymore because they thought they were too easy, but they were there is, getting back to well-being and that sense of community in a school. I think as humans, we're pretty good at doing that, and making sure that they've got what they need, and helping them.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just looking through this sort of lots of questions. If anyone does have any other questions, please do put them in the chat. Large classes, these sort of strategies with large classes, is that something that you've had experience of, with kind of maybe more than 30 in the classroom? Or
I've had up to about 30, and they do work. And also, the good thing about when you have these large classes is that you also have a classroom space that you can adapt for different kinds of activities. So using one space for storytelling, one space for knuckling down and doing group work. It's great when you can move around and change interaction patterns.
Just having a look, there's sort of quite a lot of questions, quite similar. Sort of teenagers holistically with aggressive students. Advice on how to cater holistically with aggressive students.
That is tough, but that, I think, again, going back to this idea of community, if you have aggressive students, you're going to need some support from your
Mm.
director and for the staff that help you out in your school in general.
Mhm.
Talking to parents, setting clear boundaries with the students, and really listening to them are
Mm.
fundamental in order to
Yeah.
make some progress. I realize it can be frightening for a teacher, particularly once a teacher with not very much experience.
Mm.
But getting that support from people around you, I think is extremely important.
Mhm. Okay. I wish I'd had this session for my first primary class on time. I had a group of, this is in Japan actually, it was a group of sort of 12 kids, and we had a big bowl of plastic fruit in the middle of the table, and my boss had come to observe me teaching a primary class, and they all just kind of grabbed the plastic fruit and started throwing it
Bring it around
around.
the room. Yes.
Everyone, yeah, including my boss. Yeah, that was an interesting discussion afterwards. I should have kind of, yeah, got some of these techniques before that. Luckily things got better. Actually, I think, no, things did get better after that, thankfully. Okay, any more questions? Just have a look. Oh, someone's asked if you could do a quick 1-minute recap on where is it on check-in.
Check-in. Okay.
Recap. Yeah.
Really, in the handout, there's it's one of the all of the activities that I've talked through are there, and there's the instructions on how to do it. But checking in, it varies obviously according to the age, and the level of the class that you're teaching. It could just be 3, happy, okay, sad. I have cards that I cut out and laminate and stick above my board, so they're always there. And then at the beginning of the lesson, obviously we need to teach this vocabulary first. They need to understand it. But then afterwards, I recycle that vocabulary every lesson, asking them if they're here, calling the register, and then how are you? And they tell me, I'm happy, I'm angry, or I'm okay. And then you can gradually expand that to tired, sleepy, angry, depending on the vocab that you have in the course that you're using.
Okay.
And just by using it every day, you gauge how your learners are feeling at the start of the lesson.
Okay.
Okay.
Great. Thanks, Jane. Really enjoyable. Yeah, what a lovely way to start Saturday. I think. No, it was great. It was really